Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second installment of the Plan RVA Better Together Regional Webinar Series. We're so glad to have everyone joining us today, and I'm particularly excited to introduce this month's guests. Last month, we dropped off with a conversation about our Emergency Management Alliance, and we're going to continue that thread forward to talk about how partnerships work in the region to be able to promote community well-being. And this afternoon, we have very special guests with us from our Richmond Region Education Foundation Collaborative. This is a group of folks who have been working together for a long time, but most recently with Plan RVA through our partnership with the Community Foundation and the COVID-19 Relief Fund. So we're so glad to have you all here today. I am so excited to be able to ask you all some questions and to talk about your partnership that that we have enjoyed with you for the last 8 months. And so with that, I'm going to just launch right in with some welcome and introductions, and just wanted to say thanks to each of you for being here. So we're going to go around the screen and do some introductions of our panel. Scott, if we could have you go first, that would be great.
Yeah, glad to. Hello, everybody. I'm Scott Blackwell. I'm with the Community Foundation for a Greater Richmond. My role is Chief Community Engagement Officer, and in that role, our team provides capacity building to nonprofits in Central Virginia. And that's by way of education of nonprofits and their leaders, convening and collaborating, as well as grant making. And I think we'll get into a little bit specifically how grant making has aligned with this group.
Great, thank you so much. Tyron, how about an introduction from you?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tyron Frazier. I have the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director for the Chesterfield Education Foundation, where CEF works closely side by side with Chesterfield County Public Schools and the 63,000 students in the region, helping to make sure that we can provide equitable educational opportunities and classroom innovation for all students.
Thank you. Mike Taylor.
Yes, thank you. Mike Taylor, CEO of the Henrico Education Foundation, serving about 50,000 students pre-K through 12th grade here in Henrico County. And also just kind of share too that I serve as well as the treasurer on the board of directors for the National School Foundation Association. So work not only with, my friends and peers here in the Richmond region, but also foundations across the country as well.
Excellent, thank you. And Ty.
Hi, my name is Ty Tepke, and I'm with the Richmond Public Schools Education Foundation. And very similar to what both Mike and Tyron said, we work closely with our district to help bring philanthropic support to their initiatives.
Excellent. Well, we are so grateful for you all to be here with us today. As I mentioned, this group is new to Plan RVA. We've gotten involved just in recent months. It's a partnership among the local education foundations, and I'm going to kick it over to Scott, maybe to tell a little bit of a story about how this group got started. And I'm going to share my screen and give a couple of stats about the COVID-19 Relief Fund and a little bit about where we began, and then we'll dive into the work of the education foundations.
Okay, so should I wait and see what the slide is? Okay.
There you go.
All right. So, as many of you know, the Community Foundation had an agreement with Plan RVA that we would activate funds and a process to distribute funds in cases of natural disasters and emergencies. I think when this plan was made, people were contemplating a hurricane or a tornado, not necessarily a pandemic. But we did start off in a big way with a pandemic that affected all of the residents of Central Virginia, and in deep, deep ways that none of us could have imagined. I think we're all very fortunate that we had that agreement in place and we're ready to roll. And literally, what was it, March 12th and 14th, those general dates when we realized we had a serious issue on our hands, we were able to activate this fund due to the partnership in very, very quick time. And I think the first donations came in the third week of March, and the first grants went out equally as fast. So I'm very thankful to the EMA and to Plan RVA that we had that in place. Over the course of the fund, we have raised about $6.7 million. A lot of that came from corporations and foundations in the region. Some of that came from national attention, Humana and Facebook, and even the CDC Foundation became involved in this work. Through yesterday, we've made about 215 grants, and we have spent about $6.5 million of the $6.7 million, which was our purpose, was to bring the money in and turn it around and put it on the ground very, very quickly. The slide that Martha has presented shows you that 75% of the money went to emergency response. And listed below that, you can see healthcare and food access, schools, and emergency housing, or said differently, taking care of the homeless. That's where the vast majority of the money has gone this year. You can see some of the organizations listed with whom we've partnered. There are hundreds. Some of the specific organizations are represented here by our good partners, Tyron and Mike and Ty. You can see 14% of the money went to schools, and how we first became associated together. Although we knew each other well before, we got very close when we realized that public schools needed computers and tablets, and needed hotspots, and needed access to Wi-Fi. And so through this fund and with some other donors who were able to join us, we were very fortunate to be able to put money into the hands of school systems, and that they in turn could put computers in the hands of families and children. This is a vast, vast problem. I won't go down the rabbit hole of the word broadband. I'll leave that to people other than myself. This is the tip of the iceberg, but it's also a good example of how COVID has escalated responses to something that was already a problem. Access to computers and Wi-Fi is a long-standing problem and will continue to be for some time. But COVID turned a spotlight on it, and we were able to get some balls moving on that. And then the other side of the chart here is 25% of the money has been devoted to recovery. So how does the community recover from what's occurred? Specifically rental eviction, rental assistance and eviction prevention have been a big part of that. Caring for children before and after school, particularly for essential workers. And then some money has been devoted to deploying resources to the workforce, those who've lost their jobs or lost income. And I could go on, but I will stop.
Thank you so much, Scott. Really appreciate that overview. As Scott mentioned, Plan RVA really got involved with this group back in March, right at the beginning of the activation of the incident management team for Central Virginia. That group of emergency response coordinators and other public safety personnel were meeting regularly at the convention center in Richmond. And I think a large number of us were pulled in for various reasons to participate in those meetings. And that's really where this partnership began, at least from the Plan RVA perspective. Since that time, since about April, we've been meeting by phone, by virtual meeting. Once, I think when we started, we were weekly, and we've scaled back to bi-weekly now as we've moved through the summer and into the fall. And this group has done just, I think, a remarkable job of being able to identify issues that span the various school districts and communities that they represent, and working in partnership with the Community Foundation to really have ears on the ground as far as what the emerging needs might be, and to inform the strategy for how we would go about addressing emerging community needs as this crisis has continued, and our ability to be able to leverage the COVID-19 response fund in the best way possible. So I just want to say, kudos to the Community Foundation for being along with us this entire journey. We've appreciated that continuous participation and guidance, and kudos to the education foundations for stepping up in ways that I would imagine you didn't plan. So My first question for you as the panel members is, what in the world is an education foundation and how did you get involved in this work? So Mike, I'll pass that one to you first, since you've got, from what I understand, some experience and some exposure to the national scene.
Sure. Yeah, and this is really, I've been working in the Education Foundation about industry about 13 years. So this is the second education foundation I've worked with been here with Henrico since 2014. And folks often, I think, don't realize what we do or who we are. They think of us typically as a big PTA or maybe the development office at your local university, and really that's not who we are. We're in the space of transforming public schools and looking at ways to strengthen what's happening in our schools and working with our school districts to connect resources, really, and convene experts to come to the table to help address problems and challenges that every school district faces. We spend a lot of our time in that space and really, often partnering together. And it's been great to be a part of this process because we've come closer together through this. While we may be in different districts, we often face many of the same challenges, and it's been great to be able to come together. But, as folks think of an education foundation, we really are a connector. We're a way to bring additional support to schools and really connect those that want to have an impact, with the needs, whether it's in a particular school, the district as a whole, or with a particular initiative like literacy or STEM education. And again, I'll let the rest of you jump in and kind of share some of the things that you're doing, but it's really a unique opportunity because while we're a separate 501c3 entity from the school district, they're not specifically our kids, but it's the school district's kids. So it's a great partnership as we come together to work with them to do what's in really the best for all students in the district.
Thanks.
I'll add in, for us, there's also a component of just being a safe place to innovate and test and pilot things. Being outside the elected kind of structure, the tolerance for us pushing boundaries and failing occasionally and learning is just higher and easier to do with flexible philanthropic dollars. And for the things that stick, we can scale them and then the school system can take over them. So I think there's just the ability to just test and try things is just wonderful.
Thank you. So, why would education foundations coordinate? I mean, school districts are separate. So what would be the value of you all working together and getting to know each other and crossing those boundaries?
Yeah, I think a regional approach is exciting. And, when funders and others look at addressing challenges, when you can have an impact that's, again, as specific as a school, but then become as broad as a region, which gives us the opportunity to partner together. Really, kind of piggybacking what Ty was saying is being that research and development arm for the school system. And as you're looking at a way, how do you make the case to whether it's the Board of Supervisors or to the school board or to others for additional funding, piloting those ideas using those philanthropic dollars so you can show the outcomes. So coming together, as a region, we can have some greater impact and really a broad reach. So it's an exciting opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and to add on to Mike, to give it a real practical look in a sense, when COVID hit and, we mobilized initially for food insecurities for all of our community. That was the biggest need. Not only could we not find toilet paper in our stores, families were beginning to experience, and we all experienced, the lack of certain products and items on the shelves. And for our families that, have the greatest needs, it was very, very challenging. So being able to mobilize within and collaborate amongst the group to, in a sense, bypass natural procurement requirements that some of our school systems had to purchase food from vendors at the drop of a dime. I mean, Henrico became a vendor for major food distributors. We partnered, in a sense, with our school district to purchase food to make sure it could go directly out to our Chesterfield food bank, which became key. And so we heard the needs of our communities. We knew the needs of our communities around food insecurities, and in partnership with Community Foundation, we're very quickly able to mobilize to get food on the ground to our families.
Yeah, and to add on to what Tyron was saying, this group was exceptionally helpful to the Community Foundation. Of course, we have partnerships with large food banks like Feed More, but during this process, many smaller food banks came to us requesting money for food as well as for supplies like freezers or trailers even. And Tyron's a good example. He sort of held center court for food requests, and I could work with him to determine where we should focus in Chesterfield and make sure that we were distributing funds in the best and fastest manner.
So I'm curious, was this familiar space for each of you? It sounds like you are accustomed to playing that role in the community, but what was different about this particular experience this summer?
Everything. I think for all of us, we've been in a nonprofit world. I mean, we've known each other through other roles, other positions, and things of that nature. And we've grown accustomed to know that I think collaboration is key for all nonprofits, really, right? But for this summer, I mean, it was just like, Mike called and, we all said we will show up. And then we will come together to meet for those that weren't able to meet in person, and listen and learn. And I mean, literally, Ty took us. It was a whiteboard activity in a room of the convention center to try to figure out how we could literally make this thing work. And a few side cell phone calls to others to try to get them as a part of the group.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, I just hear like sound bites from all that time. And like, I couldn't remember which one of you got me into it, but I do remember for like the first couple of weeks being like, this isn't our space. And like the IMT was just happy that we would handle the money, and we were happy they would handle logistics. And that was working. But the whole time I felt like we were like, somebody else should be owning this. And it was a little while before we kind of made all the right connections and to bring in, I guess, Martha and Annette and Scott to really get us focused and driving it along. But it was very organic, and everybody kind of just was like showed up and then found their spots. But it was a little weird at first.
Yeah, and I think the thing for us, is you ask what's familiar versus unfamiliar. I think we're all used to being very flexible, because in the education foundation industry, we're the ones that folks are coming to from the school district. I have this problem, I need some help, or I have this need, can you help us find a resource? So we're used to it from that side and being nimble, being flexible. But Ty's right, there were a lot of things that were a stretch and a reach at first, but then as we realized how many of our families rely on schools for the delivery of specific services, government services, food, things that they get on a regular basis that now were not being provided because students were virtual or it was difficult for them to be there. We were able to scale things up very quickly. Again, some of it was unfamiliar, but that's where we partnered together. And again, I know I used some of the same vendors that everybody else did. We shared ideas. Sometimes things looked a little differently in each of our districts, but we were using a similar process. So, and I think, again, it bound a lot of the ideas that we're looking at now in continuation have been stronger because we work together in this relationship and partner together.
So we've talked a little bit about this group really kind of formed, and those connections started to really kind of bind together around the food access issue and the very quick response that had to be made for the reality, as Mike just said, that students who relied on meal delivery during in-school time had that gap in the spring where summer feeding programs weren't up and running yet. Some of the federal funded channels weren't pivoting quite as quickly as the need existed in the community. But I'm interested to know, I mean, we're in so many respects now in December, so well past, that's a well-oiled machine at this point, but the group has stayed together. What other issues did you encounter over the last 8 months that it seemed like it was important to continue to work together?
Yeah, I think some of those, and I'll let you guys expand on it as well, but again, we touched a little bit on broadband being an issue that we've each addressed some things differently in our areas, knowing that that's going to be a continual long-term regional approach. Um, Equity and diversity have certainly been important to all of us, and as we've been looking at ways to partner and recruit more diverse workforce in our schools. But then really, again, kind of a sharing of resources and many ideas that we've bounced off each other, and some some regional approach to school convening around childcare and after school resources and things of that nature. Really, as we mentioned before, there are a lot of similarities in our district, but it's when we can come together collectively, it gives a bigger voice and an opportunity, I think, to really create some impactful change.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, and this is only a small group as comparison to the full regional education foundations. And one key to remember is that almost every school district, every public school district has an educational foundation attached to it. And so this group is so much larger. But when we saw and we knew that kids were in a sense beginning to get left behind because of technology, we knew real soon and real quick that we needed to be responsive. And again, the community foundation, the community overall really stood up and began to help us. And for some of our districts, there was some infrastructure in place for middle school and high schoolers, but our elementary schools, for instance, in Chesterfield, fourth grade and below did not have at-home devices. And so, we knew we needed to mobilize. But we also knew that, a device, a Chromebook, for what many of us use, is just a paperweight without internet. And so just like with food insecurities, we know that, technology and internet access availability, it can be limited because in some cases, the cell phone is the internet for the entire house, right? And so when the cell phone leaves the house, the internet is no more. And so, we knew in Chesterfield that not only that, 3,000 families were internet unstable. And so, and that instability is not just from, Wi-Fi, it's from actual infrastructure. And we learned that the infrastructure is lacking all around our region, especially in our rural community. So, the great love about this group is that, we began to think about our 1 degrees of separation and bring in folks from, our local, our senator's office, our congresswoman's office to these conversations. Mike will tell you, Mike had an idea for longer than just this year, but as a way to try to create permanent internet access for students with Chromebooks all throughout our region. And I think that's still an idea we should pursue. But that is one of those things where we all came together as a region to figure out how we could mobilize to access some of those federal dollars, accompanied with local dollars to make sure our kids could start the school year with internet access.
Do you think?
Sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Ty. Sorry. Yeah.
I think Tyron really touches on an important thing. There's of the 3 people you see here, there's probably 5, I think total 5, right? Am I missing anybody? Hanover and Goochland are also part of this conversation. And, we've been in communication with each other and staying in touch for years, but this really gave us a way to really kind of solidify a project and then think about what other projects we could apply that model to. And there's an even larger group of ed foundations in Virginia that call in once a month, as far as Lynchburg, Northern Virginia. There's probably about a dozen of us on there, give or take. And sometimes we're just sharing, like, here's what we're doing. Here's our strategic plan. Here's some best practices. But that collaboration, or I guess the flow of information has been there. This really gave us kind of a unified way to take that flow of information and take it out and serve all of our school districts.
That's awesome. That's great. It sounds like not everything that you've undertaken in the last 8 months is new, though. I mean, I've heard a couple of things. Mike had some of these ideas about internet access and bridging that digital divide. Tyron, in your opening remark and introduction, you talked about the importance of enhancing equity for all students in the system. How do you think just maybe globally, the pandemic and the emerging social justice movement in the community has changed the work that you're doing and will continue to do in the communities?
It's pretty unique that, this today's time, everything that is as loud as it is, our education foundations are also very responsive, not only locally, but around the country. Mike talked about, he is a board member on the National School Foundation Association board. And, the school foundations across the country came together for a series of talks throughout these last few months to talk about what is happening in our local communities with things like, what is your school district doing with schools that are named after potentially inappropriate people? And it's not just in the Richmond community. I knew that, but I didn't know it, right? I needed to hear it, and that's the case. And our school foundations are dealing with that. I had a partner in crime down in Decatur, Georgia, who she is actually, their school foundation in Decatur actually leads the equity efforts for the school district and the community. It just blows my mind away how much of a reach we have across the community, yet we are so unknown. I had no idea about the Chesterfield Education Foundation until I started with the Chesterfield Education Foundation in 2018, right? So it's like, we're the best kept secret, but why is that, right? And so if there's any type of, follow-up, exit ticket, homework, in the classroom kind of analogies, it is that, I asked everyone, today on this, that is just viewing this, is really to share the message around, the education foundations out there, and all of us, we all are nonprofit organizations working to enhance public education across the country.
Yeah, that's true. And I think as Tyron was mentioning, as we talked about, and trying to think, you were panelists on one of those, thank you for your time on that, on one of those discussions. And, as we look at equity and trying to address things in our own district, I mean, one of the things that we looked at as a challenge, and several of us are partnering together on this, is, making sure we've got quality folks coming into the pipeline as teachers, as administrators. Are we really reaching out to a diverse group of folks? And what we're finding is that, if we want school districts to really bring in a diverse staff, it's difficult to do that if you don't have them in the pipeline, or you're not encouraging people to pursue teaching as a career. You're not encouraging them to, you would be a great administrator, you would be a great principal. And so that's one of the things we're working on now with the professional development series, getting folks to consider teaching as a career at a time when a lot of folks, really are not thinking about teaching. But then also being a principal, being a leader, being a mentor, there's not a better time to do that and really show, how diverse our community can be, how great our community can be, and the kind of difference that folks can make. So I've been excited to be, to partner on that, as well as bring things to the table, to have a sounding board. To how did this work in your district? How did you handle this? Who did you partner with? And really, as we've said in many of our discussions, it doesn't cost a whole lot more to bring a few additional chairs to the table. If somebody's doing a training, we can do it across district lines. We can do it, let's bring in the partner from next door, and we all save a little bit, but we, expand the reach.
I think what's interesting is each one of us exists because of our school district, like each foundation does. But our work manifests differently across the districts. So Tyron was doing mostly food through the COVID work. I was barely focused on food, but mostly focused on Chromebooks because RPS didn't have a one-to-one technology plan. And once we got that done, I've kind of been, the Ed Fund has been able to move back to RPS's strategic plan. And in some ways has kind of kept some of that work moving forward while the district, has responded to all the challenges of the current teaching environment.
That's a great point. Yeah. Scott, I'm interested, what's the difference between the community foundation and an education foundation? Are you in competition with each other, or what does that look like?
My answer is no. I see these other gentlemen smiling broadly. I hope their response is no as well.
About $1 billion.
That we do support the education foundations. We have a number of donors who give us discretionary funds, and some of it is earmarked for specific fields like education or specific school systems. So we pass that through to these foundations, and we have normally supported all of them with operational funding. And then as projects emerge, like with Mike, there's a mixed delivery project related to childcare, and we've been able to provide him a small amount of funding to help continue with that pilot. So I hope we're not competitors. I hope we're collaborators, and I hope we allow them, make their jobs easier by finding resources for them. If you three agree with that, we can take that offline, not in front of this group, but I think we're good.
Is it just, I mean, is it just they're nice guys and everybody, we're all friends, so we like to work together? Or is there kind of a more strategic purpose that the Community Foundation sees in investing in education?
Oh, no, there is definitely a strategic reason. Educational success is one of our high impact areas. And we have specifically focused in the past couple of years on after school time. What do children do between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m.? So there's been great partnership there with nonprofits, let's say like Next Up, who partners greatly with TIE and RPS. As we're rounding the bend this year, we're shifting our attention and focus to childcare and bold goals of by 2030, there being access for all families and all kids to some form of childcare. But absolutely, the work that these gentlemen and their school systems are doing are part of our strategy. We also do some in-school work, nonprofits who might come into the school setting and offer additional education. The Podium Foundation is an example, or Blue Sky Foundation. But yes, we like these people, but it's also part of our commitment to the community and people, and particularly kids who live in poverty situations, and specifically Black and brown children who need additional help to get a leg up and move toward a more sustainable and more successful future. So yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So back to the Education Foundation partners, I'm curious to know, I think Ty and some others spoke to this earlier, that really you have this opportunity to be kind of the test bed, that incubator for ideas, not just in your district, but maybe across the region. What do you think is on the horizon as far as emerging opportunities for school systems? What are kind of the pressing issues in the public school arena these days, as we hopefully look to maybe the end of quarantine in the next couple terms?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that's come out of COVID is it's challenging us to rethink instruction and what we're doing, to embrace the technology in a different way. And again, while nothing replaces that one-on-one in-person instruction, but the use of technology, especially in the classroom, can really, I think, change as we go forward. We're seeing some really unique and fantastic ideas that I think can be implemented, and ways that we can support students that now a virtual component or a technological component can add to that in-person instruction. So I think that's one of the things that's coming ahead, is how do we redesign? I had, a administrator with the school division the other day tell me, for years we've been moving more towards a center focused and, breaking kids up in centers and so on. And now, as we've got some kids virtually and some in person, we're rethinking that whole philosophy around that, and the way that we're going to be delivering instruction and the tools that we're going to be using. And again, we don't want to just take away your pencil and give you a laptop. We want to utilize that in a way that it is an enriching component to your educational experience.
Ty or Tyron, things you see ahead?
I'd say we've seen already the overlap in broadband and I don't think we've solved it. I know we haven't solved it, and I think that there are ways to solve it. And I think what's fascinating to me is the opportunity to tap into federal stuff that's already going on, and even locally, organizations that serve similar populations who are experiencing similar problems. So for me, the example is VCU Health. They need a way of doing telemedicine with their patients right now. And many of their patients are also parents and students of RPS. And so we're seeing these interesting threads align across them. For us, I think recruiting men of color specifically into our teaching, so our teaching pool is just more diverse. Men of color are always, not always, but traditionally underrepresented in teaching. And then I think workforce and the transition of our high schoolers from being in school into both college and directly into the workforce. For RPS, 50% of our seniors don't go to college, and they're heading straight into the workforce. We need to be making sure that whether it's VOTEC, kind of in a traditional sense, or in other ways, that we're giving them the skills to find that work.
Thanks, Ty.
Yeah, and very similar for Chesterfield, we are fortunate to have what I like to call a big thinker superintendent who works really well with an innovative organization such as the Education Foundation. We really want to spark that, right, and take a hold of it and do everything that's on his list to get it done. But we know that our resources are limited for what we can do. But I will say that we've been fortunate to launch the PSAT and SAT for All initiative last year, which is pretty initiative. That was pretty innovative, and that's what part of a start to begin to remove barriers for students who want to pursue more. And so removing the barrier for taking a $50 SAT test could prove to provide a student that didn't think about college a 4-year degree before, it could be a jump start to it. And so removing barriers, taking AP classes and things like that, those are the things that our superintendent wants to do. We're also providing more access and reach to career technical educational opportunities, making sure the programs that we are doing as it relates to career technical education are all credentialed, so our kids don't just leave us with really good knowledge of certain skill. They're actually they're able to go into the workforce as soon as they graduate with a credential that could potentially lead them to a higher paying income from the start. And so, it's really exciting to hear about what we're able to do in partnership with our school district as it relates to our current students entering the workforce. The other thing I would say, and just like my colleagues and Ty and Mike, we're working together to diversify our teacher workforce. 19% of our teacher corps are minorities or Black and brown teachers, but yet over 51% of our student population are considered minority students. So we are a majority minority school district in Chesterfield, and we want to mirror. We want to make sure our teacher workforce can mirror that population at some point. So we are working really closely in our early stages of developing and putting together some things that could potentially change the fabric of Chesterfield County Public Schools long after my kids have gone through it. My youngest is in first grade, so it's really exciting to be a part of the things that are happening that will continue to be a part of the school division for years to come. And then the introduction of, for us, the brand new Chester Early Learning Academy, which is slated to open in Chesterfield in February. As a matter of fact, we're going to do the ribbon cutting in February and begin registration. So we know, just like you heard Scott say, that childcare is important. And this was a really cool collaborative opportunity to take one of our recently replaced elementary schools, give it back to the school district to repurpose it into a new childcare facility to serve about 500 3 through 5-year-olds in the Chester community, with the goal of getting them academically ready to enter kindergarten. So being able to fully read by the time they enter kindergarten. So this is really cool. And again, our superintendent, it challenges all partners that are attached to Chesterfield County Public Schools to do more for our children. But most importantly, we'll work side by side with the Education Foundation and making sure that we can leverage the funding that is received through the local government, state government, and federal government. And also partner and pair that with what our local community can do, whether it's $5 or $5 million. We're able to leverage that. Your return on investment is going right back in to our kids and our communities.
Wow. Well, I think you guys have a lot on your to-do list. It sounds like it's really exciting to hear the opportunities, but also the work that lies ahead. So I want to leave a little bit of time for maybe some questions from those that are viewing the webinar, but it strikes me just listening to you all talk that you really do at the Education Foundation level sit right at the nexus of public and private partnerships. And you're really kind of leveraging the best of both of those spaces. And I'm seeing some heads nodding there that sounds right. I'm curious, Plan RVA is not, from a programmatic standpoint, really engaged with education. We focus more on the local government side of the public sector, and candidly, typically don't really get involved with the school districts and the superintendent's offices and those kinds of things. So as much for my education as everyone else's, I'm just curious, what do you think? What do you think the opportunity might be to be able to forge some unlikely partnerships and really kind of cross those boundaries? You've talked a little bit about it's a secret that shouldn't be a secret. The education foundations are these tools that we have in our community. What do you wish maybe folks that are in our constituency knew about you, or what do you think we might be able to do to kind of close that gap?
Yeah, I think one of those is awareness pieces is big, as folks that if they have a particular area they want to support or something that they can offer, we tend to be a great connector because we're in conversation often with superintendent regularly, with other members in the school district, sharing needs and challenges. Think of us sometimes as the convener, looking to bring folks to the table. So if folks have a resource, an opportunity, they want to be impactful with the school, we can help make that happen. We can also be kind of that go-between at times to make sure data is flowing back so they can see the success, that a funder can track and monitor things. Not that school districts can't do that, but it's, we're very focused on that piece of it. So it's an opportunity for somebody to be very connected and close to the challenge and offer a solution, and really be impactful and make a difference with students.
I'd like to turn it over if there are questions from our attendees, if anyone wants to ask a question of the panel or offer some additional comments. I see we've got some folks that have been engaged in this conversation along with you along the way. So we'll give a couple seconds here to see if anybody wants to raise their hand or indicate they'd like to ask a question. Hi, Mr. Spoonhauer. This is our chair, everyone, Neil Spoonhauer. He serves on the Goochland Board of Supervisors and chairs the Regional Commission this year. Glad to have you with us.
Hi, Martha. This is incredibly timely. I just had the opportunity, the superintendent of Goochland County gave myself and one of my peers a tour of the elementary school and the middle school this morning to just see how things are going. And I just really wanted to thank you. So this isn't as much of I have a pad full of questions. So if your contact information gets sent out, don't be surprised if you hear from me, because I've got a million questions for all of you, because you're dealing with the things that are impacting my constituents like on a daily basis. So my first comment is just thank you. Thank you for what you do. I know a lot of times it just seems like you're pushing a rock up a hill, but you're making a difference and you're making that hill a lot less steep for a lot of people. So thank you for that. The second thing I would say is that I'm a freshman, non-politician, but I'm pretty involved in the community. Served on the board of Goochland Cares, so I wouldn't consider myself unfamiliar, but I was shocked when COVID hit at the reliance on the schools for feeding programs. I don't know why. My daughter went through Goochland. Her mom taught there for 10 years, and just to see that reliance and was really shocking to me. And watching that was almost equal, if not more of a priority for us than I would even say some of the academics was. We got to get these people fed, and that is amazing that people can rally around that. And it's also alarming. So I love some of the comments around, how do we help people out of these situations, and the VOTAC, or what we call the CTI programs, and getting people that college may not be for them, and putting as much emphasis on those things. I just love that this group is looking at the whole picture, and just thank you for that. And again, hope that I can reach out and pick your brains some.
Yeah, please.
Thank you for being
Cindy Brown in Goochland too is the executive director of the Goochland Education Foundation, and has been on our calls. I don't think she was able to join us today, but I know Cindy would love to talk to you. And you're right, education is the great equalizer. And a lot of the programs, I know in the other districts, we for sure in Henrico are looking at wraparound services and things that we can do to create a full service community school model, so that, if you can strengthen a family, if you can help a parent, if you can provide an educational opportunity for a student that's going to help them long term, you're going to strengthen the community. You're going to see better results in school, and really a community that's stronger and accomplishing much more.
Thank you so much for that. Mrs. Page, it looks like you've got a question also. There we go. I think you're unmuted now.
First of all, I'm Patricia Patrick, Board of Supervisors for New Kent County. Want to thank all of you. It is so easy to go about your day-to-day tasks, but I, as a fundraiser and in nonprofits, I can tell you it means that you go far beyond the average work day or any other day. And one thing about what you do is not something that you have to do. So because of that, I truly, truly want to thank you, especially during times such as this. I know in New Kent, we have a New Kent Education Foundation with all the restrictions and mandates that are put on local governments, to have someone to step in to do something that some would think is so insignificant as Chromebooks. I mean, wow, how would we function this year without them? And I think that for our school system, we have learned in communities how dependent the community and parents are for a safe place, and school has become a safe place. And so what you do is far more important and significant than before this time others would have realized. And so for that, I commend you, and I thank you for all of your efforts that you put forth, and your dedication and commitment to community. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Page, for those words. That's really wonderful. I think we're about ready to close out, so I thought we might just do a round of kind of final thoughts and conclusions. I just want to say I am so grateful for having had the chance to get to know each of you and to be able to be a part of your regular calls. I have learned so much, and I think that it makes perfect sense that a school in our community would be kind of the foundation for identifying so many things that represent the fabric of the community. And I think you all at the Education Foundations, by your relationships and the extension that you have with the school districts, you really are a tremendous resource in understanding the issues that are facing families, and the issues that our community faces in looking to the future. So I echo the sentiments from Mr. Spoonhour and Mrs. Page to say thank you for the work that you do. And thank you for allowing our organization to be a part of your journey together, and being able to be a fly on the wall during your conversations these last 8 months. I've really enjoyed it. Final thoughts from the group. I'll just leave it open with you, and want to say thanks again.
I'll share something, kind of big impact numbers that will show you the power of this group and the power of this fund in collaboration with Plan RVA. Is on food alone, in the first set of grants we released and have reported outcomes on, and that's 70 different organizations. A lot of lifting was done by this group, and let me tell you what the numbers are, and it goes to what Mr. Spoonhauer said, but we delivered over 1,022,000 meals. Think about that. That's huge. And we delivered almost 88,000 bags of groceries, again through this group and the money that was raised. And that all totaled 3 million pounds of food. So the need is tremendous. This helped about 215,000 families. The need is even greater. But had this group not come together, think of the millions of pounds of food that would not have been delivered. So kudos to everyone on this call who made that happen for the kids and families.
And I would just echo, so Martha, you are like the glue to this group, and you kept us together. So it's really an unlikely, unusual relationship that we had, but hey, COVID brought us together. So thank you, Martha, and thank you, Plan RVA, for keeping us together and keeping us talking and moving us along in a coordinated effort so we can have collective impact throughout our region. And that's really key. So thank you, Martha.
I would completely echo that. When we were all sitting around saying this, we're not the right ones to be driving this. When Martha stepped in, it all came together. And I think for Martha and Scott both, organizationally, the organizations have been huge support for us, but for them as individuals, the personalities, Martha has kept us focused and moving forward without pushing us in any direction, which is a really unique thing. And so this would not have happened without Plan RVA, without her guidance. And for Scott and the Community Foundation, I'm sure it was exciting for everyone who was involved in creating that emergency response fund to see how well it worked. This was the first real test, right? Mm-hmm. They like little things like fast tracking grant apps, and the amount of transparency that was provided to us to know what was available, when it was available, so that we could use our time wisely and keep our school districts informed. And for Scott in particular, I think it's always a little interesting when you've got a big funder at the table, because you just have to kind of take it into account usually. And it's never felt like that with our interactions with Scott and the Community Foundation. In this interaction, it's really been a wonderful partnership, and I feel like we've only ever felt support and genuine interest in helping us get where we need to get and to serve our students. And so thank you both, and just we wouldn't be here without it.
Yeah, and I echo the thanks as well. So many things I think we're able to accomplish because, again, Martha, you were able to, as we said, hey, we need to get these folks to the next meeting, and you and Plan RVA lining them up, again, some of our legislators and others to be part of those conversations, but then really the ability to a sounding board with each other, Scott, and the partnership with the Community Foundation as we were, hearing things and sharing them back to you so we can inform the work that you're doing in the community. It was really a unique partnership, and I want to say I think I've benefited and feel like not only learn more, but we're in a better position to be even more impactful in the next year. And you guys have really helped make that possible. So you can't give enough thanks to you and Martha both.
Well, thank you all so much for those kind words. I think, we've been able to, as I said at the beginning, this is our second of this webinar series, Better Together. And I think that this panel just really has articulated the meaning of that and the idea that when we can come together, we can do great things. So thank you all for your commitment to your communities in the greater region, in each of the ways that you serve the communities. Really appreciate that and look forward to a continued partnership with your organizations and the collective as we move forward to address the many issues that we have on the to-do list. I would be remiss if I didn't say if there's a representative from a community foundation that isn't on the call, or a education foundation that's not on the call today. As has been mentioned, we've had lots of activity and participation from our Hanover Education Foundation and the Goochland Education Foundation. But if the other education foundations are interested in joining, I think we would welcome that chance to bring more into the fold and to continue the conversation. So happy to be that conduit to be able to extend the invitation. This group will be convening after the start of the year. So those of you that have not filled out your poll for the next meeting date, please do so. And I'll just close by saying thanks again to everyone who's participated in the panel today, Tyron and Mike and Ty and Scott. Thanks so much for offering your time today, and our attendees and those that are watching via YouTube. We really appreciate your time and your consideration, your interest in things that are happening in the region. The next webinar will be in January, the third Thursday of the month, and it's at 2 o'clock. We'll be covering another important topic in the region, that is affordable housing. So certainly something I'm sure that the students in the districts that you serve are faced with on a daily basis, but we'll have some experts in talking about some of the partnerships that are happening around affordable housing and some of the really exciting initiatives that are moving very quickly to address our supply needs in that front. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Look forward to seeing you next month. And between now and then, happy holidays and happy New Year. Thank you.